Hey folks, how's it going?
Hello.
Very lucky.
Hey folks, how's it going?
Good.
Lee doesn't seem to be online on Discord. I'm not sure if that is an indication that he's not going to join us or going to be a little late. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, I guess I'll get us kicked off. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the meeting. By being here, you will have already agreed to the membership agreement, the participation and contribution guidelines, and the code of conduct. If you haven't done so, please leave. They are all linked in the agenda. Let's go through and do an introduction of attendees in the order that they are in the agenda, with the exception of me. Hello, everyone. I'm Benji. Donna.
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna, and I'm here representing GraphQL Java and Atlassian. I'm not sure who was next on the agenda. I think it's Roman.
Hello, I'm Roman.
Okay.
I'm from Seattle.
You're very quiet. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Roman. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm from Seattle. It sucks here now. I represent Microsoft.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt from Meta.
Yeah, hello everyone, my name is Russell. Actually, I work in the Donna and the same team and for Atlassian, and we are working for the GraphQL Gateway. Maybe you already know this. This first time I'm here just to see how's going on and what else we can help.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I think Lee's running a little behind, so I'll continue to lead for now. First of all, if anyone can help taking the notes, that would be ideal. I'm going to try and take some, but if others can help, that would be great. And let's have a quick look at the agenda. So normally we have a look through the action items.
Heads up, I think the live notes link is wrong.
The live notes link is in fact wrong, as you quite rightly point out. If you go to the primary meeting instead and open the document from there, that is the one. And going forward, that is what we tend to do. We use the primary meeting notes for all of the meetings for that month. So I have already kitted those out in there. But yes, I'll share a link to that in the chat. Thank you for the shout out, Matt. Cool. So reviewing the previous action items, and then Donna with the licensing and final legal sign-off for the GraphQL Scalers project. And then Roman would like us to have a look at and potentially review a number of pull requests, all of which against the spec. I had a glance through them just now, and they're all quite short ones. Excellent. So let's have a look and see if there's any action items ready to review. Nope. So just loading up the remaining action items. I haven't advanced any of mine. I don't think Lee has advanced any of his. And the others don't seem to be. Roman, you've got one there that is on you. Poll people on what they feel the domain of the spec is, but I think, yeah, we discussed that last week. So unless anyone has an update to give us, I think we'll just move on. Okie dokie. So Donna, over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the custom scalers specification project. The last thing that we need to, firstly, thanks to whoever connected the URL. I'm not sure if that was Lee or somebody else. So great to see that we've got scalers in the URL. And then the last thing to sort out is the legal stuff. So the license, and just make sure that we're doing everything by the book. And I wasn't sure do we go with the standard GraphQL Foundation licensing for this, and whether there was a person to talk to at the Linux Foundation to get this sorted.
Yeah, good questions. Questions which I'm sure Lee would be brilliant at answering.
Should we table? We could just table this to the end of the meeting to give Lee time, because it'll probably be a lot more productive.
Yeah,
I think that's wise.
If that's not his department, then we can wait for that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, in which case, over to you, Roman.
I'm not even sure. Hi guys. So I'm not even sure. Should I actually do it in this form? Bring it up to this meeting, and it was just I want to clean up the number of my PRs which are approved, which are discussed, but they are just sitting. I have no merge rights, and so basically I thought it's just make a push through here. So and then I can. Probably because I'm getting lost in all these small things, and I would like to clean it up probably and then move on. So basically, we can. Benji, you said you already looked at them. Most of them are just tiny typos, things like this, or not so tiny, but basically, I don't think there would be any opposition. But if you want, guys, we can go through them one by one. Or you can just click on the links and see.
Can I suggest that we start by going on the ones that have been approved already by two people with merge rights? I think they're both TSC members, me and probably Michael in most cases. Matt, maybe you could have a look as well, stamp your approval on them. Hello, Andy, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Just to catch you up, Andy, we've done the introductions. We have skipped an item in the hopes that Lee might attend later. So we are just looking through Roman's spec pull requests at the moment.
Okay, great.
Check. I'm not sure. Did I share? Yeah, I think I shared the screen. So basically, this is the first one, 974, and what I'm not sure about the approval, but at least one approval there is there. So basically what says that in the implementation, the sentence says that the implementing field should exactly match names and types, the old phrase. We actually allow covariance in implementation, and basically this is the fix. So all the fields with names and types either exactly matching or of covariant types, because as far as I understand, this is the rules of implementation in GraphQL in general.
So I don't, for this one specifically, I think that the existing spec is correct. So this is, if I understand this correctly, and I could be wrong, it's that the types available, like when you say interfaces, like type implements XYZ, then the interfaces, this must list out all possible interfaces. I could be wrong. I might be
yeah.
So your change here would allow covariant types, but not necessarily. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it is all
fields matching is covariant type match is okay.
But then the implementations, so I think the fields line is correct, and the implementations line, the implementation, that doesn't change, it just changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think you're correct. I have to read through more context. Yeah, I will review this further. I think you're correct.
Okay.
I also think that you've got the right read on this, but I'm not 100% certain, which is why it doesn't have my stamp of approval yet. I need to like actually
Yeah, basically I need to go through the context of where exactly this is, which will take me this
No, but
one
by the whole meaning, as far as in general, the implementation rules, which surprised me early, or kind of not in a bad way, but the implementation rules I remember from the early that of the interfaces of particular fields is that type matching is covariant. So basically, that's the general rule in GraphQL. More relaxed, much more relaxed than in languages like .NET. So basically, it was probably left over from some earlier times. I don't know. Were there other times?
Yeah. So the sentence going to covariant types, either exactly matching or covariant types, I'm pretty sure you're correct. And then why is there this green space?
That's just wrapping because of word wrap.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you're correct, because I'm also pretty sure that elsewhere in the spec we say covariant types for this exact reason. Like for the schema, because this is introspection, not schema. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, well, whatever. I'll review this. We can move on to the next one. I'll add my comment and review.
Okay. About uniqueness of directives, we introduced in the last revision, we introduced repeatable, but forgot to change the description. And basically, we are still about that repeating directives is bad.
Yeah, I've already proved this one. And yeah, this does seem to be, as you say, a leftover. Have you scanned through the spec to see if there's any other locations with this same issue, or is this the one place?
What the same? I just went through the entire spec and tried to find things like this.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you mean the same?
The same issue where it refers to the repeatable directives and hasn't been updated for it.
I cannot guarantee, but basically I was just going line by line and trying to catch all this. So excellent. I can guarantee cannot. Well, thank you about directives, but kind of about all other things. Okay, if there are no objections, you guys have a look at it again, and then please approve and merge. This is just not be very strange capitalization case. Purely editorial. Looks strange. General, there was a kind of capitalization sentence versus sentence versus first cap. So on the whole section, and it was different than in the entire other document. So the entire document generally follows first cap on every word, while one section was different. So,
really so I've just merged 980 because yeah, that seems obvious.
Explicit reference in one place. It was really kind of unclear from it. So this is covered in that section of the spec, and it was completely unclear which that section. About the executor, there is no section of executor. So I just put the reference to what section. Because I was puzzled at the time, what section? Even if it's execution, but not executor. Executor. How to pronounce it, actually? Who is our English?
Do you want it pronounced in the British or American?
I don't know.
I
But
think
my
all
Russian style is often
executor,
completely wrong.
executor.
Executor. Because we're going from execution, yeah. Okay, so if no objections, let's move on.
Just rolling back a second, I was looking at 981, which is the capitalization of subsections. I see that you fixed the ones in section 7. I was just going through the spec itself, and there's definitely inconsistency in the capitalization of the headers. It's not clear what the capitalization should be. I know in section 7, as you rightly point out, it's mostly capitals everywhere except for those 3 places. But there is quite a lot where that same header style is used in the rest of the document that isn't capitalized. So I think we should make an editorial decision on that, a stylistic decision, and then enforce it throughout the entire spec in one pull request. And that may not be as simple as it sounds, because we have to decide which style guide are we going to follow for capitalization. Like, should the letter A in and be capitalized if we're going for sentence capitalization? Maybe we want to use like the Montreal style guide, or maybe we want to use one of the various others. There's quite a few to pick from. But I suggest before we make this change for the section for chapter 7, we should just decide what it should be for the whole spec and do that capitalization one fell swoop. That's my read on it.
Sure, but now, I'm actually surprised why it's only this. I believe I looked through the entire document. You say there are still different cases of capitalization in other sections. Maybe it's latest some kind of addition edits, but at the time I believe I found only this, or maybe there is something lost here. But I believe I figured out that throughout the document, most cases are first cap. And I'm not an expert, but I believe that when you have first cap, you don't capitalize prepositions and all that little words.
That depends on the style guide.
There's also a question of whether errors, like errors, counts as something like the kind of word that should be capitalized or not, given the section that Benji just pointed out. So yeah, I think the action item is that we should, exactly as Benji said, we should have an action item, just like we need to decide what our style guide is, and then we can apply it. But this is good that the PR is pointing out that there is a discrepancy in the style.
You can create an action item on me. I can go into the current draft and look through again and at least get the stats. And probably I can do another PR with a final, but change it to the style that is prevalent. If we have 90% like first cap, then go and make a PR to change the rest, just like here, if there are any more. So
I mean, probably as like a group, we should decide on the right styling. But yeah, basically, yeah, either way, we'll just yeah.
Okay. Then just who is ever in charge, please make an action item, and we can leave it alone for now.
And anyone can file an action item. You can file the action item against GitHub, and you can write it into the notes. I'm taking some notes on the issue itself at the moment, so if someone else could do that, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I'll do it then.
Oh, I added it in the notes, but
okay, so we were here. This is also really small change, one word. It was kind of this change, the word change was kind of out of context here. I think it's challenge. What meant as a challenging task, not like we always go first without subscriptions, then with subscription, and this is the change.
I think that this is actually intended to be changed. And the reason why is that if you are creating a GraphQL service, supporting subscriptions requires changing some underlying architecture, some underlying structure for how the service works. So it's not.
What do you mean again?
Yeah.
Again, so what changing? Why changing? I'm building things from scratch. I didn't have it, and I'm building from scratch with subscription. This why you are assuming that first I build the whole thing without subscriptions, and then there is significant change. We shouldn't assume, you know, that's it's not, nothing is changing from the very beginning. I'm building with subscription. The fact that subscriptions represent a challenging task and difficult task, yes, and this is kind of logical here. But in the old version, we kind of the reader reads and asks, why you guys assuming that I'm changing? Like I'm done with the first part, and now chapter 3 subscriptions. Oh damn, you know, it's a big change for me. Doesn't seem logical.
I wouldn't say this is wrong. Honestly, the correct thing might just be like, instead of supporting subscriptions is a significant, just like subscriptions have a different operating model. Like instead of like being up, I think that the feedback here is like the whole first line is probably not great in a spec, because it's like, oh, you need to be like, this is going to be hard for you. Here's like a big mountain you're going to have to climb. Instead, we should just be like more fact-based. The subscriptions are different. In supporting subscriptions require a different approach than queries.
Again, different from what? Different again, we have some discussion from.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but at least, you know, I would agree that probably we can even remove, you know, something like this, or revise this sentence substantially. But I wanted to do the minimal change, which doesn't actually cause the question. Change, what change, you know? Challenge, yeah, it will be difficult. We just give you upfront. Okay, let's then think about this if we kind of can't agree, and but let's finish this. It's one of these small things, should be just fixed one way or another and move on, right?
Yeah, I agree with Matt's. I mean, I've said it before. I don't like saying that this is challenging because it isn't necessarily challenging. I understand your concern with referring to change. I would say most people start out GraphQL schemas with queries and then they add mutations, and then later they might add subscriptions. That does seem to be the general pattern that people follow. But you're right, they could implement them all at once, in which case, yes, it's not technically a change. But I think Matt's take on this with his suggested wording is better. I've summarized that in a rough quote that I've put into the issue, but some wording like that expresses what Matt coined there, I think is going to be more effective than using emotive words like challenging.
Okay, then you guys, let's figure out the proper sentence. It's kind of one of the sentences, just introductory sentence to the subject when you don't have, don't even know what exactly to say. Okay, we are starting a new chapter, right? And kind of that kind of blah blah blah, without much meaning, but to have some introductory statement. All right, next. So here's the sentence, and I'm removing in parallel. Essentially, it says that merging fields are merged when executed in parallel. And basically, it's not quite logical and raises a question. So it means that on the one hand, the server has a choice to execute it in parallel or serially. And in this sense, the result should not matter. But if we leave in parallel here, it says merging should happen only if you execute it there in parallel. It means that it will be different results. I don't think the meaning was that it must be executed in parallel. You mean in one request, there are fields with the same name. How it's executed, it doesn't matter. But then these two fields
hear
with the
what
same
you're
name.
saying, and you may be correct at the moment, but this is going to change very soon when we add stream and defer. There, where the same response names are executed, they're not executed in parallel because they're executed in separate phases, separate execution phases, and they will not be merged. So I think the actual current wording is actually more future-proof.
No, because in this section, it's the reader is not in the streaming kind of area. And in this section, when we're talking about just good old query with the two keys matching, then here it means that the response should be merged no matter what. When you come to, you can put a note, it might be different, in the other section when there is a streaming. But again, in the context of this particular section, it is still doesn't depend on parallel.
So this section seems to be about value completion, which is what happens when a field is executed. And it's talking about the fields with the same response name that are executed in parallel. There may be more that are executed with the same name later. We're talking about merging selection sets here. And value completion is a runtime concern. So I'm not sure.
No. Parallel. It's essentially parallel threads and so on. Even with the all of the goodies like streaming and so on, everything might be executed serially. It's just the server, the way it's built, or it doesn't have CPU resources. That thing should not depend on the merged or not. It's the shape of the output. It should not change depending on how it's executed.
So
basically the rule.
This may be, we shouldn't be using parallel in this whole section, but within this section, parallel has a specific purpose. And the purpose and meaning of parallel here is discussing when you have within the tree, at the same level of the tree, the same key, which parallel is probably not a good name for that because it invokes parallel processing, as you're explaining. I think that that's correct, but we keep using parallel throughout this section. Like immediately below, we have an example operation illustrating parallel fields with the same name. It would be confusing to have that example operation illustrating parallel fields without kind of the context that we're talking about executing things in parallel. I agree with you that that is a confusion, but I'm not this
But probably
specific change, I think that like there's some word we need for like same level response key, like response keys at the same depth, multiple, like I think there's definitely something there, but when unless we remove the parallel fields like throughout.
what does it mean parallel? Again, then let's be careful with words. And maybe there are somewhere we use it loosely, but in certain cases, it's actually become confusing because parallel in many contexts, it actually means this parallel serial execution. So, and in this particular case, it looks like, and it's actually the meaning, number one that comes in mind, what we put into this phrase is that a parallel execution, because it's executed in parallel. It immediately causes that the execution versus zero. If when it's executed zero, then it's not applied, I would say. So I'm suggesting to improve the way at least we use these terms and try to avoid confusion. In this particular case, it causes confusion because we use the term sometimes loosely, but in this case, this brings damage.
Yeah, but so the change will, I guess, my review on this means there's line 747 right underneath also needs to be taken into account. Because
parallel
changing
fields probably.
Yeah, changing one without the other, like they're being used to describe the same thing. So if we change the context of one, we need to.
But there is one thing here. It's parallel fields. It's actually the context is slightly loose. The first phrase that I'm fixing is executed in parallel. This is the direct reference to execution. Here, it's loosely used term parallel fields.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
it means for fields, it means that, look, they are next to each other. It's less severe here.
So we could say the other thing we could do, if the problem is that the context is under execution, the other thing we could do is change the executed in parallel to appearing when two fields of the same name appear in parallel. Or something like that.
Well, here it doesn't sound good. But by the way, my first question is, we all agree that actually my general thinking is correct, that no matter how it's executed, parallel or serial, the merging should happen, right?
Yeah, and in fact,
so we actually don't mean it. Yeah.
It's a merged execution. It actually only executes once, like the field has already been merged, even though it's referenced multiple times. So yeah, I think the wording here is definitely wrong, but I think Matt's right. If we change the wording here, which we should, then we should also make sure that a similar change has been made so that the entire section is consistent. And I think using response names as the identifier here is also the right take in general, because that is what governs whether or not it should be merged. I'm just going to interject for a moment here and cut back to Donna's topic for a moment, just because we were going to circle back anyway. Lee will not be joining us. He's had to deal with something else. So Donna, Lee says that he's in charge of all of the things that need to be done. And I believe his plan is to basically take the licensing info from the spec itself and tweak that for whatever the needs are of scalers and go from there. So if you don't already have a GitHub issue tasked to Lee for that, please do file one, make sure that he's tagged on it. If you want, ping me on it and I will assign him to it, because I'm not sure if you're able to. And yeah, then hopefully we'll be able to get that sorted. There is also, sorry, did you want to say anything in reply, Donna?
Yeah, and also I'm just mindful, I don't want to heap everything on Lee. If there is somebody at Linux Foundation or elsewhere where I can help out, if it is possible, then I'm also happy to pitch in.
I think you could probably, if you wanted to, open like a pull request, but don't actually merge it, and then have Lee be the one who presses the big old merge button. But I'm not sure.
Okay,
Lee said that it's on him to do that, so I think it's okay in this case to assign it to Lee.
Okay, yeah, I'll create that. Yeah.
Awesome. So the other thing that Lee has reminded me to tell everyone about, and I'm afraid we missed Russell and Andy for this, is that we have the TSC elections. They are open now. They were delayed. Normally, we would have run them already, and we would know who would be starting as TSC members from the beginning of January. But things got delayed, so we've pushed everything back a month. So if you want to nominate yourself to be a TSC member, you can absolutely go and do that. And then votes will be taking place early in January, and the new TSC members will be starting at the very beginning of February. And we know that I think at least 3 of the TSC members that are of the 5 that were going through the, I should reverse this a moment. So the TSC is made out of 10 people plus Lee, and we serve 2-year terms, and they're offset. So 5 started 1 year and 5 started the next year, and then everyone serves a 2-year term, and then you can renominate yourself and we all go through election. So of the 5 that are renewing this year, 3 of them have decided not to renominate themselves. So there's definitely space on the TSC if you feel that that is something that you'd be interested in. If anyone wants to ask any questions about the TSC, please feel free now. Otherwise, we'll go back to Roman's topics.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I nominated myself. So where were we? So what do we do with this? Reworking the entire chapter?
I think just look for the words parallel and find a consistent wording that deals with all of them.
Yeah, basically, it's unfortunate that this probably cannot be a smallest change, but we kind of all agree you're right. You're right that this isn't as accurate as it needs to be, but to get like the activation energy to get it to the next level of accuracy is more than a like 3-word change.
And listen, my only problem, reformulating English, well, I'm really not good at it. I can fix small things, but, please understand, English is not my first language, and literacy and ability, to reformulate sentences and find a good synonyms, that's kind of
honestly you pointing it out and us getting agreement that this is not correct and going through this process is value. And I can take an action item on like rereading through, providing like specific, or even creating another
suggesting
PR.
suggesting specific.
Right, exactly.
That will be great.
Yep.
Okay, so action item. So where were we? Parallel execution and finally, I do not suggest this is not in the list on the agenda. I do not suggest to actually push it or something, but this is kind of had been hanging there. This item, and it's kind of had been in the store, and honestly, I do not understand what the problem actually is and why there is
I
such a
remember this
disagreement.
issue. So
Yeah,
there are two
excuse me,
ways.
what
Go on.
excuse me. So I want to just then finally in this, can I ask one thing? So you guys say that this is different from what you think. Can I just see, you say that this is just a fragment, right? That's not the full query. This
No,
is part.
it's a
So
selection
can I
set.
see? No, I mean as the query text. It is full. Can I see, please, the full text? Because it cannot be the complete thing, right? That server receives. So can I please see the full text that is meant from which it is as an example? So maybe then it will become clear for me what I'm missing. If it's only part of the request, then I would like just to see the full thing, and then maybe everything will become clear to me that there is nothing wrong here. So because my statement is that what is missing in this from the full version is the mutation in front.
Okay, I've written into the Zoom chat two different operations, GraphQL operations. The first one is a mutation operation with a selection set that has the field foo in it. The second one is a mutation operation that has a selection set which then has a fragment spread in it. That fragment spread is a fragment that is on the mutation type, and it has a selection set that contains the field foo. Both of those selection sets that contain the word foo, they are selection sets that will execute serially. It doesn't need to have a mutation keyword, or it has to have either a mutation keyword or a fragment keyword. But at the moment, the only selection sets that execute in serial at the moment are those found on the root level mutation type. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that will always be the case in GraphQL. For example, there's been a lot of discussion about allowing nested serial execution types to allow, for example, namespacing of mutations. So what is being discussed in this part of the specification is execution of a selection set. So what we have here is a selection set with a field that is going to be executed serially. It is not a full operation. It's not a full document. It doesn't need to be, because that's not what we're discussing in this section of the document.
The problem for the reader is that when I see the opening brace, it feels like this is the query, the request, and for queries, you can skip the operation type. And this looks like absolutely legal request with a just missing operation type, which is query. And that's what is confusing. I understand what is discussed. It's the example itself. Again, this whatever might happen in the future, nested mutation, and so on. But just in the context of this particular example, I'm following on. I'm reading the explanations. I see the example. I expect to see the example as in most cases that this is entire request. Oh, this is missing operation. Okay, query is optional. I put query in front, and what I see is completely illogical. So basically, to land it in the context. So in your example, you show that it's actually might be mutation on a little more advanced example when it's actually a fragment. So leaving this more advanced example with a fragment, but as an example, let's just put mutation there, and then all the questions go away, because the confusion is that I'm looking at complete request, and it's a query. So I do not understand what's preventing making such a simple change and removing a whole bunch of confusion from the reader. Okay, this only I would agree absolutely, but the problem is that it's foo. It's not change birthday. Change birthday that you see there, it's the top. If it was something else, I wouldn't probably argue.
Right, but the
But
point is
this is the top.
selection set is what's being executed serially. And that's why the text leading into it is, for example, given the following section set to be executed serially, is telling you what this example is a selection set.
Can you put there, instead of foo, can you put the change birthday? No. That's the problem.
Yeah, of course you can.
No, you can't, because you are executing then all this thing on the result of the result of the result of something, and it cannot be mutating method, as far as I understand. Mutating method can be only on the top.
Right. So I gave an example where the mutation is under an inline fragment. The change birthday is under an inline fragment that does the same thing. Yep. That has the
Guys,
exact
this
same.
is how confusing many people hit this. I don't understand. First of all, if we put mutation there, this would be example that works for this case as an illustration, so on. It won't kind of change any sample. It just remove all these mental stop points that not only me, but people have. Just remove this mental stop point, even if you're right. It's actually not exactly mutation, it's selection, but it will be absolutely clear and non-stop experience.
Right, but then what you've got in your example isn't a selection set anymore. It's now an operation or a document. And what we're talking about is how you execute a selection set serially, not how you execute a document with a mutation in it.
The problem is that it is operation, because change birthday is mutation method. It can be only under operation or under your whatever fragment, which is a bit more advanced, and I think should not be brought up here. But basically, change birthday, the trigger is the name of the method. If you put foo there, nobody would say anything. But change method, it means that I'm on top, I'm right under mutation. Why mutation is missing? And mutation missing, then immediately, oh, it's a query. And how query can do change birthday? Why complicate
So
things?
I think that this is, you're hitting at like, we need a way to introduce, because we do this actually throughout the spec where we operate, we give you snippets that are selection sets rather than full fragments, rather than full operations, rather than full documents. And possibly what we need is a like quick intro somewhere of like, hey, when we talk about a selection set, it's the subtree of the, like, we're talking about a subtree rather than the full context, the full query, the full mutation. And that's
Again,
exactly,
it's not subtree. It's not subtree because of the name of the method, change birthday.
it
is the
still
top.
is, because we could have multiple selections. Just because you're at the top level, you can have multiple top level selection sets. And that's
Right.
like, that's actually an
What do you mean?
important thing about GraphQL, is that you can have multiple selection sets that will need to be merged together. And you can have them anywhere at any level of the tree. You can have them at
So
the top
you mean,
level, have them at,
you mean change birthday method can appear actually on the results inside the tree? It means that no, but then it means that again, then I'm asking, change birthday, it's mutating method. It means it's one level below the mutation.
in the
So
That's what triggers them.
in
Do
the
you-
response,
right?
it will be, but that does not mean like in the document that you are writing, it necessarily is at depth 1 in terms of selection sets. if that makes sense.
So far, I'm not getting it. Sorry.
Basically, like, oh, go on, Benji.
I wonder, Roman, whether you were interpreting the dot dot dots as stuff here rather than as the fragment spread operator.
You mean in the examples you show?
Yes, in the examples we've just put in the chat, those are nested selection sets, but they're not on the result of any other field. They're just nested selection sets. They could have like directives applied to them or things like that, but they're still not on a field. Yeah, they're still subtrees, but they're not subtrees in the response. Like the result field will still just be
dot 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 is not fragment. It's not fragment
spread.
call.
Yeah, it's fragment spread.
Fragment spread. Right.
It's an inline fragment spread.
Why you are bringing up this complicated example? Because yes, many other things, but in example, you should put essentially the simplest possible thing, which illustrate your thing. You can invent things and so on and say this is just, but essentially in the straight thinking of reader who is possibly reading this for the first time, it really confuses. And basically, even if what you are writing is possible, maybe, but I don't think then it is a good example to keep in mind, oh, I know such things is possible in GraphQL, and you are trying to bring it up in the background on the user, on the reader who is reading it the first time, and the model he has in mind is that, oh, it's mutation. That's a strange one. Donna, you wanted to say something? No.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think that you're getting at something where, right, for new readers, what this, like these floating selections can be confusing on like how they get, where they belong. The other aspect is like we need the spec to encompass even the edge cases. So like we need the spec kind of has a dual role, right? The spec has a role in educating people on how GraphQL, the system, works, but also in being so descriptive that you cannot, if you follow the spec word for word, you will cover all of the possible cases that, like a GraphQL server, you will not, there will be no ambiguity in how your GraphQL execution operates. And that, I think this specific example, probably you're getting at, like, this is not a great intro example because it's confusion. It's confusing that this is not like we gave nothing, and this is, as you're pointing out, this looks like a valid query document, right? Because if there's no, because earlier in the spec, if there's no operation, then you assume that it's a query, right? As you're saying, if you just paste this into graphical will treat it as a query. And
right.
What we're right. So like, yes, this is not copy pastable into graphical as is and have it just work. But we do this a lot in the spec where we're just using selection sets. We use selection sets that aren't even types on the query root type, right? Or like where we have fields that are the top level fields in the selection set that are not fields on query. And so it won't work if you just paste that into graphical. And like, there's,
you see, do we actually need the mutation? Because we are talking about in general serial execution, not attaching to the streets. What triggers is this combination: absence of operation and the word. It means that you guys are missing. You know, if you put there get the address, read some read method. In the as an example, in the context of what you're explaining, I think it works as well. It's just two read operations working as in serial, executed in serial. That's yeah, there would be no questions, right? If it were only, then it will eliminate this confusion about where is the mutation keyword.
Yeah.
So if you change these two, you could send it to read birthday one, read birthday two.
It's possible we should do a ... on mutation, for instance, which would make it clear that, like, hey, this is a selection set specifically on mutation, in which case we would probably want to update all of the selection set examples that we have to do ... on the parent type throughout the document. But yeah,
but again, why not change just the name of the method? Why it should be mutational? Use the read methods, kind of non-mutating methods, as names for serial execution, and that would then it.
Well, the context from above is when executing a mutation. So we're explicitly stating, okay, everything below here, we're operating in the mutation mindset.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not great. I agree. It's like if you had trouble parsing this, and like if this was confusing to you on first read, that is definitely like an area that we probably want more clarity. I don't think you're wrong on that.
It's just the mental stop. Even if all you say is right and in some way, I mean, educated way, clear, but this is a kind of huge mental stop.
Yeah,
and it's not me, because other people report it, and actually it makes you stop and think, and unnecessary distraction.
I actually think
feeling
it may be the case that what we really want is like runnable. If you look at like the Rust documentation, for instance, their Rust book, the code snippets are like runnable examples. And if we could get closer to that, that might help like unblock, but I don't know exactly how we would do like that. That's a pretty big lift.
Again, the simplest way, put mutation there. And it works as an example, simpler than less generalized, but simpler example, but example is something to be simple. And it will be absolutely correct request, no mental stops, no questions, and everybody's happy. That's what I don't understand. Simple fix, put mutation. Yes, simplify maybe the example.
If you did put mutation there, then you would have to edit the text as well, because it's no longer a selection set. It's now an operation or a document.
And
so you'd need
unfortunately, you'd also need to, in the executor must, you'd need to describe, once it hits, like once it does the mutation, once it resolves to mutation or whatever.
But then again, I don't understand how it can be not the top level in general in mutations still, even with fragments and so on. It's top level thing. Change birthday cannot be anywhere down the tree.
There's also a future world where we would allow serial execution not at the top level.
I think right now it's not, what I mean allow, it's allowed anyway. So it's up to the server. It's up to the server how to execute it, but at least down there. But the thing is, to be honest, I'm in the future world, I would actually attack the whole concept of order of execution. It's just in general. In the future, don't think, but it's the future world. Right now I'm concerned only with this. Okay, I think we discussed enough, but still, at least we're aware and agree that there is something confusing here. Mental stop, right? And sitting there and thinking, what the hell, right? Oh, these guys made a mistake. Oh, they forgot it, and so on. Or it cannot be queried, even if it's zeroed.
Or we haven't set the context correctly above in what the examples, because there's actually a bunch of, like the example above of just birthday and address, that example is not meant to be a query. And if you're reading it like a query, then we've set the we've set your expectations when you're reading incorrectly. And I believe we have other selection set examples.
Wait. Here you don't say anything about mutation. And when I look at it first time, I see it as a full query. It means that default query operation type.
Yep,
first
that's
example,
what you're
right?
Yep, but that's not what it's intended. It's not intended to be all query, which is why, like, that's
then it should be
exactly
rewritten. Oh, if we are talking now, because this looks like we're still, and by the way, why it cannot be query? Because it's serial execution of the query. And that's how it's all, so far it's logical and goes okay.
correct. That's not the author. I believe that this is not the author's intention for it to read like a query, but because we don't set the context correctly, that is how it's reading, and that's what's causing the downstream mutation confusion, I believe.
Yeah, so to expand on that, you wouldn't typically have like maybe a birthday field right at the root level. You would have a user that you select or a person that you select, and then they would have a birthday or an address. So this is, again, a selection set. It's not an operation or a document. It is just a selection set that we're talking about. And Matt's right. We need a better way of indicating that. I mean, we do have it with the other example where we explicitly state below that it is a selection set, but that still doesn't seem to be enough. So I wonder, I mean, I think runnable examples is a nice goal to have, but quite a lot of effort. But I wonder if we can do something that's a little subtler, like, for example, adding a title or a caption below it, or even a non-normative note that just says, note, here we are showing a selection set, not an operation. An operation that uses this selection set might look like this, and give an example of that actual full operation.
Another thing is, if
let's just take a part of the query, say something like this, and probably indent it from the left and put some ... or something, as Matt suggested. Visually that this is part.
Yeah, selection set is meant to imply part of query rather than, whenever we say selection set in front of an example, that's the intention. I agree, like, so, right, one thing we could do is around the blue example text, or purple example, or violet, whatever color that is, we could, for instance, expand the, like, fragment on user, and then have the example, like, have the example be inside of that fragment, for instance. If that makes sense. So it's like the example is the selection set.
Wait. You are talking about the second example with change birthday?
Or,
can it be on user? Can it be on user? That's the big problem. No. Can it be on user? No, it cannot. Because it's change birthday. Mutating
so
method
I'm talking
only
about
on top.
the example right above it.
This one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So with that one, for instance, it would be clear that we're talking about a selection set, not a query, if we had like a little wrapper around the violet box that was like fragment user on user birthday on user, and then the example.
Yeah.
And that
but
shows,
again,
hey,
we are in trouble.
selections.
then we're still in trouble with this second change birthday and change address.
Right. We would
Because
then
it cannot be down there because of the name mutating method. It means that I'm
we
not in
could
some
do
selection
fragment
set.
M on mutation.
I understand. But then again, immediately pops up that this is top level method. And why not then show the entire thing rather than this fragment? In the first case, yes, that's logical. This is not the whole thing, right? It can be down the road somewhere in the tree, in the request tree, query tree. But in this second case, change birthday, immediate indication, I'm top level. Right in this opening brace, something is missing there. Why didn't they just put it to show the whole thing? You see the logic. Okay, so let's just I don't know, continue discussion, but offline come up with something, because it's still hanging there and it's still mental stop. You know, something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I agree. There's like, if on reading this, you are not treating this as a selection set, but instead as like a document, then there is something we're doing. The action item is basically on first read, people are reading this, Roman especially read this as not as a selection set, but in fact as a full document, figuring out a way to clarify and make it more crisp what the intention actually is would be a good editorial change.
Okay. So you suggest action item or something, and
yeah, it'll like, I really wish Lee were in this meeting. I think he would have like, so the answer might be we just like, we do nothing until we do a larger rewrite, because the level of ambiguity here is present all throughout the documentation. So if you're going to solve this, it would need to be solved in a lot of places. Like this is where it jumped out to you, but
no. I think here it's a kind of combination. It's not like, oh, others example are that bad. They are good. Actually,
okay.
Yes, they are. They assume a lot, but they are good. This one, just these two jump up, this and the next one. So basically, I wouldn't spread it so much on others.
Yeah.
But let's decide. Maybe okay, we can leave it to final, but at some point we will have to kind of fix it, right? At least this one.
Yeah.
Okay, from me, that's pretty much it. I'm done with my list.
I think that covers the entire agenda. I had nothing to bring up here. Did you have anything else, Benji?
No, that's it from me. Thank you for the discussion, and anything we can do to improve the spec is good. But I think here the focus needs to be on clarifying that what we're looking at is a selection set and why that is the case, rather than turning it into a document. I think that will give us the best stead for the future to enable those future discussions about extending serial selection set execution to other areas of the schema, which has been mooted quite a number of times. But yeah, something here to improve clarity, I think, would be good, because as you point out, Roman is not the only person to have tripped over this. There have been 3 or 4 people that have tripped over this, I think. Cool. Thank you, everyone. And I guess
Okay.
we'll see you at the next working group.
Just general ask, guys. Those of you who have merge kind of rights permissions, if you see a few items sitting there like approved PR, then after sitting there for a month, you know, just go look over, and if they are approved and they're ready to merge, then just merge them. Like half of the
think if
items we
they're-
discussed today, they were just primitive.
Yeah, some of them, if they're merely editorial, like most of the ones we discussed today, I think we are allowed to just merge them. So part of this is probably like we've kind of historically leaned on Lee to do that. And the rest of the TSC, like somebody, I believe it has to be somebody from the TSC who does the merge. And the rest of the TSC has less history in just merging editorial things. So I believe typically it would, like, if it's not just a merge, it requires a vote and a like little bit more process. So that that's kind of it's not a good, it's an excuse like on why things have been slow walked a bit. Sorry.
Okay, it's just my ask.
Yeah, I understand. And yeah,
It takes kind of
regardless, the
some
process
effort,
needs to
time
be-
to push it, then you finally push it, it's approved, and it's sitting there, you know.
Yeah, I understand that's frustrating. I'm glad you brought it up to a working group meeting to basically, like, it's not good that they are just sitting. The process that left them just sitting is not, like, we need to improve that. I 100% agree. That's
Thank you. Yeah.
The other thing to factor in is that one approval isn't necessarily enough to merge something into the spec. Like there is a high bar to merge something into the spec. So unless it gets approved at an actual working group where everyone on the call has all agreed that this should be merged, then the fact that, like, for example, I've put my stamp on it does not necessarily mean that I haven't missed something critical there. And so I tend to wait for at least there to be 3 approvals from significant working group members.
And we maybe should do a better job of like tagging at TSC when if one person approves, if one person within the TSC approves something, we should be a little bit more proactive of pulling in other people. So it's clear that it should be
essentially what happens is one approval and then it sits there forever.
Yep.
I understand. I need 3 approval, but where are others? Like for 2 months it sits and nobody looks at it. That's what I'm asking, please.
Yeah, we're all volunteers.
Somebody come, you don't like it,
we don't have
put
huge
the
amount of time.
Yeah, things fall through the cracks, and we probably just need to be like get things into our notifications a little bit better. And there might be some way that we can put like waiting for TSC as a tag or something like there's probably some process in GitHub that we could do that would give us basically things TSC needs to operate on as action items. I'm not a GitHub pro, so I don't know what that would look like. But
it might actually be worth scheduling some time during one of the meetings each month to, you know, have people like us actually go through, which is what you've done here, Roman. But like, I think certainly it's quite challenging for, I know, a number of the TSC members to be able to keep up with the quite significant amount of traffic that the repositories garner. I know at the moment, I've just looked at my GitHub inbox and I've got 189 unread notifications in there at the moment. And I'm one of the ones who's actually approving some of these things, right? It's like, there's a lot of stuff going on and it is hard to keep up with.
No, I understand.
But Matt's right. If we can find things where someone's already done, like if one of the TSC members has already approved it, there's a higher chance that other members are probably going to go, yeah, actually, this does look fine. So surfacing those in a better way, like Matt says, I think it would be good to come up with a process for that.
Well, let's think about one of these rituals, maybe by Lee in the beginning. Look at the queue, or there are some who will spend a day and some time looking at PRs or reminding TSC members. I don't know, just yeah, some routine thing. There are already PRs waiting for the second, third approval and to be merged.
Maybe you should add that as a topic to the next primary working group so that we can get more people to discuss it and see if we can come up with a process for that.
I added that in the notes as a bring to Jan working group thing. So.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time.
Bye.